Wives, menopause doesn't just do a number on our bodies. It impacts our emotions, our identities, and even our relationship with our husband. Too often, it feels like we're on an island dealing with all of this by ourselves. But menopause shouldn't suck. We can be empowered to face the challenges head on with education and encouragement. Join me starting August 21st for a 4-week group coaching program to do just that. I want to help you change the menopause narrative. Join me at oneextraordinarymarriage.com/MSS.
From Naples, Florida, this is a One Extraordinary Marriage show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. I'm Tony DeLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call or text us on the Huq hotline at 858-876-5663, or send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's episode, we're discussing when menopause meets marriage, because menopause doesn't just impact the women going through it, the marriage is impacted as well.
There's a quote from Konnie Huq that talks about this. She says, "A problem shared is a problem halved. But as with so many problems affecting women, periods, menopause, postpartum depression, we often feel embarrassed as if we as women are just moaning or just plain wrong to air them." That's why we're talking about it today here on the One Extraordinary Marriage show. But first, we start every episode with a hug. And this hug actually comes from a comment that was in the Bold Wives Club private Facebook group that says, "We have made it to 23 years this month and continue to work on reconnecting. 2 years ago, I wasn't sure if we would and had almost lost hope. And then I discovered one, and it gave me hope." The Bold Wives Club has given me the sisterhood of wives wanting to keep our marriages together, but also make them extraordinary and better than before. And this is what I needed. Y'all gave me hope, and I realized I wasn't alone. Thank you.
Oh, I love it. That's so awesome. And I love what you do there with your bold wives and, you know, your calls you have every week with them and impacting them and them getting to know one another. So it's an amazing thing you do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And it's incredible to see the transformation when we get together, because, you know, just like the quote at the start of this episode, you know, there are a few things that have definitely gotten more conversational. And, you know, we talk about all kinds of things in the Bold Wives Club, but, you know, we hear more, I think, in recent years about, you know, women's periods and postpartum depression. I know even a little bit of our own story. I know that when I look back, I very likely was suffering from postpartum depression, especially after the loss of our son, Andrew. And it wasn't talked about then. So I'm so grateful that that's one of the topics that's being talked about now. And it's getting easier to talk about. But there was one topic in that list from that quote from Konnie Huq that I was like, yeah, there's still one in there that kind of gets the silent treatment. And that's menopause. And, you know, because it can disrupt or wreak havoc in a woman's life, in a wife's life, by extension, it impacts her husband's life and the marriage.
Yeah, I think the way I've seen it over the years, and you and I have been in this, I don't know for how many years at this point in time with perimenopause and everything going on, there's a lot of talk around it from a perspective of what's happening to the woman, the wife, and yet there's nothing that's really going, hey, you know what? There's a lot also happening within the marriage. And I think that's what we want to be talking about here today with you guys is there is another half, you know, there is another whole person. I'm going to say a whole person also on the other side of the marriage. And there is impact going on both sides with all 6 pillars of intimacy in this season of life. And I'm not saying, hear me out, wives, I'm not downplaying, I'm not saying anything about what you are going through. I know it. I hear it from Elisa. I've heard it from other wives. So I am not saying that at all. And yet, as a husband, I'm also impacted in this marriage. So how do we walk through, how do we discuss this together? Because here at One Extraordinary Marriage, the ultimate goal is we want to strengthen your 6 pillars of intimacy and help you create your extraordinary marriage.
Well, it's like one of the comments for one of the wives that joined Menopause Shouldn't Suck, the coaching program she shared, my biggest issue is my inability to tolerate things I used to be able to tolerate and just suck it up. I'm feeling unusually emotionally intolerant and impatient. Then there's this game of ping pong in my mind of like when I'm trying to go to sleep and my brain doesn't know how to rest. It's frustrating. The insomnia is getting the best of me. I'm pretty regular still, but I'm not sure where I am on the spectrum. All I know is that there is something happening. And I'm sitting here going, this is exactly why we have to talk about it this way. Because I hear her, I've been her, and I look at that and I'm like, oh yeah. But all those times with Tony where he would be like, what the heck is going on? Like, who are you and where's my wife? Right. And I just want to say to all of you wives out there, like, if you want to join me and these other wives, go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/MSS. You can learn all about the Menopause Shouldn't Suck program. But it's from this place of experience as a wife that it can be so easy, you guys. It can be so easy to get wrapped up in everything that's happening to us as a woman. I mean, because there is just like, there are just days when you kind of feel like you're short circuiting in a lot of different ways, whether it's, what's happening in your brain or what's happening in your body. And like the whole night sweat thing, that, like, for those of you that don't experience it, and not every woman experiences every symptom, God bless you for not experiencing night sweats, because that's amazing that you didn't, but it's crazy when you do. And you can't explain, like, I think part of the challenge for us wives is you can't explain necessarily what's happening inside of you to the man that you're married to, because you can try, but he has no clue.
Right.
There's no point of reference for, I feel like I'm burning up from the inside. Right. There's no point of reference for, like this wife said, I don't know what's happening to my emotions. I don't know why I'm intolerant. I don't know why I'm crying at every single, like, commercial or every moment or whatever. I don't know what's going on with me. And even when we try and say that sometimes with our husband, that's a hard thing, because, menopause, and you all know I love Merriam-Webster.com. Merriam-Webster.com defines menopause as the natural cessation of menstruation that usually occurs, keep quotes there, between the ages of 45 and 55, or the cessation of menstruation from other than natural causes. So basically, it's when your period stops. Mm-hmm. But the thing with menopause is that there's this whole period before called perimenopause. And then there is the period after, postmenopausal, right? And I do want to share this, like, fun little fact about perimenopause from webmd.com. The average length of perimenopause is 4 years. But this stage may last only a few months or continue for 10 years.
Wow.
Once again, every woman is different. And perimenopause ends when you've gone 12 months without having a period. And when I was doing the research on this, I'm like, wait, so a few months to somewhere around 10 years.
That's a big differentiation.
Tony didn't know that stat before this episode.
Yeah, that's huge to understand. Like, wow. Okay.
Right. Some women get lots of symptoms. Some women get a few symptoms. Some women get really crazy, intense symptoms. And every woman, so men, I'm just letting you know, every woman is different. Right. And I love this because it actually made me think of the scripture verse that talks about being fearfully and wonderfully made. And I'm like, okay, God, you do have a sense of humor, because we all go through this differently. And with that, there's an opportunity to really deepen our emotional intimacy, but we've got to understand and identify what's happening with us. And one of the questions we asked on Instagram stories last week was, what's been the impact of menopause on your marriage? And these were really profound statements. And I want you to hear what they said. Low libido or losing it completely. Difficulty sorting the trendy info from the factual. Having my husband understand that I'm learning how to recognize it and deal with it too. That's a big one.
I think that is one of the biggest ones for us husbands to understand, because I didn't get this as Elisa was starting perimenopause. The big piece that there are two big areas that I recognized when there were things starting to shift. One was definitely the night sweats and the temperature increase in Elisa. And I didn't get it because I couldn't really feel it. There are times when I could feel her being warm, but I was like, no big deal. And we tend to cuddle. We sleep naked most of the time. And I wasn't understanding, and she didn't even know she was doing this, but literally she would be swatting me away and not have any understanding. I'm like, what is going on? And and I was feeling like, man, she doesn't want me next to her. I wasn't sure how to address that to her, like the next morning. But to understand that she didn't even know what was going on, right? Like there was this area in her own body and in her own life that she's trying to navigate and then try to explain it to me. And where I got a little frustrated was like, well, why aren't you telling me? Well, she's still researching. She's still figuring it out. She's still talking to others, trying to get the information that she needed to feel confident of where she was before she was able to then be able to express that to me. So it is an interesting time, but that was one. And there are still times even now where I feel like you can still sort of heat up at times and not want to be very close to me.
Yes, it's much more controlled now.
Yeah.
It's much more controlled. But you said there were two areas. What was the other area?
The other area was vaginal dryness. And we have lived out our intimacy lifestyle now for 15 years.
A gazillion.
Yeah, it's a lot of years. And so Elisa and I know each other very well when it comes to our sexual intimacy, especially around foreplay and intercourse. And we have used Uberlube for the longest time for many different reasons, just for whatever it is. But I do remember as we were, just being sexually intimate, I noticed there were more and more times when you were just always grabbing the Uberlube. And there was always something like, it's painful, or, don't rub me like that. I'm not getting wet naturally. And so I remember that as well, just sort of going, oh, there's a change happening. Elisa, I know she knows what's going on. She's just unable right now to express it and share it. And obviously, while we're in the middle of foreplay or sexual intimacy, that isn't the time she's going to be like, hey, by the way, like, let's stop right here. We've had other conversations afterwards. So those have been the two biggest ones. I'll put a link to Uberlube here in the episode notes for everything that we have shared so far too. We'll have in the episode notes for you. But those have been the two big things for myself when I hear that one in particular is you're still learning, you're still trying to understand and recognize and inform yourself to be able to wrap your own head around it, to then be able to go, okay, Tony, here's what's going on, where I think I've been a little more like, hey,
tell me what's going on.
Tell me what's going on, right? Like, I need to know something, what's going on. And always like, I don't know. Like, I got brain fog too, and I'm gaining weight, and there's all these things that are happening to me, Tony. Like, give me a moment.
Well, and like you mentioned weight gain, that was a body image. Those are comments that other wives made. Somebody said, I don't know my body like I used to. And I think there's so much truth to that when we start to go through this season. Orgasm's more challenging, need Uberlube more, like Tony said. A couple comments where I just feel off. And then there was this really profound comment that was in there, and it said, I just feel old and sad, and I don't want to talk to my husband about it. And there were so many comments to that question. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could have written everything on this list. And husbands, I want you to know, thank you for listening this far into this episode, because I want you to know we're kind of pulling the curtain back on this to let you know what might be going on inside of her, because her body is changing, and perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause is real. It is a real biological change in our body. It's not something we make up. It's not an excuse that we use. It is a biological situation happening with inside of us. And yes, both of you are being impacted physically, emotionally, and relationally. And you can't see everything that's going on, but it is happening. And does it happen the same way in every marriage? Absolutely not. But stepping into this place of being aware of what's going on and creating space to talk about this. Like, this is what becomes critical to creating those extraordinary marriages well into our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. Like, we have so many couples in the one family who are in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s, because they're choosing to be extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to where menopause meets marriage and what the two of you can do about it, we need to start talking some strategy, and we're going to do that after this break. Whether you're taking care of your kids, a senior loved one, or juggling both, we all need a break sometimes. Care.com can help give you that break by helping you find trusted caregivers right in your neighborhood. As we've gotten older, this is something that Tony and I talk about. When our kids were little, having a trusted sitter was like gold. As the kids have gotten older, so have our parents, and their needs are different. Yet we still want help that's trusted, because asking for help isn't something to feel guilty about. You can give more to the ones you love when you get help where you need it. See why 29 million families have turned to Care.com. Find background-checked, highly rated sitters, nannies, and senior caregivers who can help with everything from watching kids after school to meal prep for seniors. You call the shots and find what's right for you, whether it's full-time, part-time, or even occasional help, all on one simple platform. On Care.com, you can search for caregivers, view rates, and find care that fits your budget and schedule. How convenient is that? Check out Care.com to get the support and the break you need. We're back, and we're talking about what happens when menopause meets marriage. And I will say, for some of you, it'll feel like obviously for some of you, it only lasts for 4 months, a few months, according to WebMD. For others, it's going to feel like you've run into a brick wall. Like, what has happened? And I want to say, menopause shouldn't suck. It is a naturally occurring process. Sometimes it is forced. I know that there are medical conditions that that women find themselves in, just that radical
hysterectomy.
When you have a hysterectomy and it puts you into a medical menopause is the phrasing that I was looking for, where it happens unnaturally because it's being, forced upon you. And that can create a lot of situations there too. But, you guys know that on this show, we don't shy away from talking about the hard topics, and we don't shy away from talking about those things that maybe are seen as taboo. And, menopause is one of those topics. It's happening. And that was actually, as I was preparing this episode, I'm like, oh my gosh, menopause is kind of like death and taxes, except just for the women. It's kind of the women's only version of death and taxes. Like it's going to happen. And so with that, can we as members of the one family, can we as couples within this community say, you know what? Let's acknowledge this. We're not avoiding it. So let's accept the fact that it's going to happen, and let's actually work together to make it the best that it can be. Now, I get it. Not every day is like rainbows and unicorns.
Nope.
It's not. Let me tell you, when I was first dealing with night flashes, I'm like, what is this thing? But that didn't mean that my whole perspective on menopause had to be like, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm old and wrinkly, and I just stick me in the ground right now. Like, it's over. Tony's looking at me.
I wouldn't let her do that.
He wasn't going to let me do it. But getting into this place, if it's going to happen.
And I do want to say, I think if we go all the way back to January, when we did our episode on apathy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're bringing that one back. Okay, where are you going with this?
We're going way back.
Oh, that was a painful
I'll find the episode. I don't remember what number it was, but I'll find it and I'll put
everybody
the number
that's listening from January knows exactly which episode you're talking
but
about.
But we were talking about apathy, and I think coming now 8 months later, I do still think in that moment in time, prior to that time, there was still a lot happening, and we were still navigating this perimenopause and a lot of what was going on, because it was the fall of last year, and even I think into summer, late summer of last year, where this is when it was all really intense, right? And so I feel like they came into that culmination of everything hit, and it was in that January timeframe when I finally had that conversation with you, and we had to address some things. And what I want to say is, I think the apathy you felt, the underlying piece of it was this perimenopause season that you'd been going through and still are going through. And yet I think at that point in time, you just didn't have enough answers. You were still struggling with a number of things mentally, physically, spiritually. And we've worked together, and you've worked on yourself since then to feel confident again, stepping into being bold again, taking charge instead of just it's happening to me. But I'm going to take charge here. I'm going to start learning. I'm going to start engaging with other wives. We're going to start talking about this. We're going to get it open and out there, which we've done for the last 14 plus years here at the One Extraordinary Marriage Show, right? We're going to get open, honest, and transparent about stuff. But I think prior to that, it was a little bit like, I don't know who to talk to about it. I'm learning and I'm doing stuff, but I'm not in community with others. And I think that has shifted since that time. And again, I'll look for this episode real quickly. I'll let you guys know, and then I'll have it here in the episode notes for you.
I appreciate you saying everything that you just said, because, one of the things about menopause is that it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It often happens when there are a lot of other changes happening in a woman's life, whether it's her, or it's the children that she's raising or growing up and moving out, whether it's the parents who are needing more care and attention. And I thank you. I thank you for that revelation, because I'm not sure up until that moment that I had put it together that I was probably dealing with the most without a plan at that point in time. And didn't realize, like we were so disconnected. I didn't realize, it's why we do episodes like this, right? I didn't realize the impact that my symptoms and what I was struggling with, I didn't realize the impact it was having on the marriage until Tony sat with me in that Del Taco in Henderson, Nevada.
It was a good Del Taco, man.
It was a good Del Taco.
Hey, it was a Romance Uncensored. It was an amazing event that we got to attend. It wasn't one that we had to speak at. It wasn't one where people were expecting you and I to share around the 6 pillars of intimacy and be on stage. You and I just got to be Tony and Elisa, just in the seats, receiving just like any other couple.
Yeah.
And what we do for all of you guys when you come to any of our events. And we practice what we preach is what I want you to know. Like, we want you to come to 6 Pillars of Intimacy, weekend. We want you to be with us at 6 Pillars at Sea Marriage Getaway. We want you to be at other conferences and events that are being held at churches around the country, because we ourselves have been rocked and have had breakthrough by just sitting in the seats and receiving. And so you guys know that. We'll never get behind our microphones and act like we know everything. We're still learning too. It's just when we have microphones in our hand and we're talking about the 6 pillars of intimacy, it's our time to see you get radically changed. And if you're dealing with menopause, wives, do know you have a husband beside you who's also going, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, it's also one of those things where, we can't be shy learning about our bodies and what's happening to them. And, I don't care how long the two of you have been married. Y'all know my 2 favorite books when it comes to this are the Vagina Bible and the Penis Book. I heard Tony talking to somebody the other day, and he's like, yeah, do you know what we give for a wedding gift? Like, Elisa's been doing this for years. She gives an Uberlube Good to Go Traveler and the Vagina Book and the Penis Bible.
The Vagina Bible
and the Penis Book. And I can only imagine the reaction on the other end, because it's just like, you do what? Because I want people literally from the day they get married to start learning about their bodies. I want that to be a conversation. I don't care, honestly, how long you and your spouse have been married as you're listening to this particular episode. Pick up those books and start the conversation now. Read your own book and then read the book that would pertain to your spouse. And then start the conversation, because if we can create marriages where this conversation of like, oh, I didn't know the penis was kind of like this fabulously, what's the expression, like the cantilevered feat of engineering or something like that. It's this fabulous because of all the valves and chambers and all this kind of stuff. Like, if we could start that conversation between husbands and wives, then when the body starts to change, and when like vaginal dryness or weight gain or whatever, like we've already got vocabulary around it. We've already had this experience of going, hey, I didn't know your body could do that. Right? That's kind of interesting. I didn't know that was possible. And now what's going on?
I do want to say one thing about the weight gain, though. The weight gain is a real thing. And guys,
Tony doesn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
It's just one of those things, man, where I have learned and encouraged and do what I can do to help along that way. It is a real thing, and I know Elisa speaks to many wives who are struggling with this, and so I know the conversations. I can hear them from Elisa's side, at times when she's speaking about it, and it is a tough topic. And part of it is our society has made us believe that 6 foot tall, 113 pounds is like beautiful, and I don't know what it is.
I had this image of
it's really skinny.
Like that is actually emaciated, but I appreciate what you're trying to create with that expression.
But it's just super skinny, and truthfully, that is not most women. It's probably not your wife. And it's something I have said and have shared many a times on this on the show, that you guys know. Elisa is my beautiful wife. And it doesn't matter if she's gained 5 pounds, or there was a time after Abby was born, she was emaciated. Like she was so thin. She's still my beautiful wife. From that emaciated piece where I was just like, Elisa, eat some food, will you? To where she is now, which I think is absolutely beautiful. So always remember, God has put your wife in your life for a reason. But you need to be saying something about her between your ears that puts her up, that raises her up, that puts her on the pedestal of being the only beauty that you see. And yes, she may be gaining some weight and she's trying to figure it out. And that's where you can come alongside her and encourage her. And maybe even you are dealing with some weight gain as well, that maybe you need to address with her. And maybe it's something that you guys do together. So it is a touchy subject. I know it. I'm lean. Elisa gets frustrated with that. And yet at the same time, I let her know that she is beautiful. I love her. I will kiss her. I will hug her. I will make love to her wherever she is. Which is fine with me.
True story.
Yes.
But it is, and what I want to say that is starting those conversations wherever the two of you are. Don't have them in your bedroom. Go on a walk and talk. Like, start acknowledging that change is happening. Maybe you're a couple in your 30s and you haven't gotten here yet, and you're just like, you know what, we're going to file this one away. Great. Maybe you're a couple that the wife has gone through menopause. You might still need to hear this episode and check in and go, hey, how are we doing relationally now that you've gone through menopause? Or maybe you're like a lot of us, since that age range is pretty wide, that you're somewhere in this perimenopause, menopause season. And you're listening to this episode and you're like, what do I do? What do I do? And ladies, if this is you, I want to say, find a tribe. Find a tribe to start having these conversations, because one of the things that menopause does, and some of those intrusive thoughts can make you feel like you're the only woman on the planet going through this, and you can feel like you're all alone. And you don't know who to talk to, and you're like, do I talk to my girlfriends about vaginal dryness? Like, is that a thing? Like, is anybody, like, would that be weird? For some of you, that would be weird. Right? For some of you, talking about the anxiety or the thoughts or the sleeplessness, you're like, I'm probably the only one. It's why I started Menopause Shouldn't Suck, because I was just like, nah, first of all, I don't want it to suck for everybody. But I also wanted to have a place where, through education and encouragement, women could get that, not just the hope, but strategies. Right? Not just to address the physical stuff, because you all know I'm not a doctor, right? Like, I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor on a podcast or a coaching program, but bringing you information about what's going on with your body, but also talking about the emotional and the relational aspects that nobody really seems to talk about. Because we can address the body, but if we aren't also addressing what's happening with our identity and what's happening with our relationships, then we're kind of like a three-legged stool where only one leg's standing strong. And we actually need all three legs. Not just our physical body, but our emotional body and our relationships to be strong, to get to the other side excited. Because when menopause meets marriage, it's not the end.
Nope.
It's the beginning of a new season for the two of you. It's the beginning of learning what this looks like and what life looks like in the next chapter. Not the final chapter, the next chapter. And I want to encourage that for all of you.
Yeah. If you're ready, if you're a wife and you're like, hey, this is me and I need to do something, go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/MSS for Menopause Shouldn't Suck. Do that quickly. Elisa's going to be kicking that off with many, many wives, and you can meet others and get in community so you don't feel alone. That's one thing we have always been about here at One Extraordinary Marriage, is that you are not going through this by yourself. Get in community with others so you can live, you can learn, you can laugh, and you can live the extraordinary marriage you desire. So you guys go out there this week, have a great one, open up the conversation around menopause, perimenopause. You may be younger and like, what the heck? Start talking about it. You're going to get there. You may be right in the middle of it. It's time to open your mouth. Maybe it's time to share this podcast with your spouse and talk about it together. Wherever you may be, let's make it happen this week. You guys have a great one. We'll catch you next week. Love you guys.